When our emotional lives feel overwhelming, our modern instinct is to treat our minds like mid-century mainframes. We assume that if we can just map the inputs and outputs, we can debug our own human trauma. We run a very specific algorithm to fix ourselves. First, we divide our feelings. Then we componentize our behaviors, recombine the data, and finally, conquer the problem. One systems engineer actually put this protocol to the test. Over 2 years, he meticulously documented his internal life in these notebooks, attempting to audit his own soul to eradicate bitterness and anxiety. He treated his own self as a clinical requirements document. The operating theory was simple: collect enough telemetry, identify the defective components, and you can program your way into emotional control. But treating the mind as a machine to be audited yields a specific byproduct. It engineers a state of non-need, building fortresses of preparation to ensure we are never caught off guard or hurt again. To see the failure modes in these psychological defenses, we have to look through the eyes of the trickster coyote. Coyote sits at the edge of our engineered walls, watching us run our algorithms, and points out where the machinery breaks down. Coyote sees us as Sisyphus in a lab coat. We push heavy diagnostic tools up the mountain, mistaking endless repetition for progress. He sees the Grinch in us, too. The Grinch attempts to master a complex system by obsessively hoarding and isolating its individual pieces, convinced that managing the components is the same thing as mastering the whole. And then there is the Wizard of Oz. Oz projects vast, smoky, booming authority outward, using an elaborate mechanical smokescreen to hide a vulnerable core from any outside inspection. None of these archetypes have solved their trauma or broken their loops. They have simply turned their souls into quarterly objectives to be managed. This chart documents the moment the engineer's control algorithm glitched. Down in the corner, past the meticulous planning, lies an unavoidable variable: still luck. No matter how flawlessly Sisyphus prepares or how deeply Oz strategizes, contingency remains. You cannot dictate the final outcome of a living system. The disruption to this obsessive control comes from a perspective like Cindy Lou Who. She doesn't try to solve the Grinch's system or optimize his behavior. She simply asks, why? And that curiosity stops the division of parts entirely. Admitting that we cannot control life's outcomes isn't a failure. It's the required first step to escaping the isolation of the optimization loop. The Little Prince understood this boundary. You cannot conquer a living thing. You can only meet it on its own terms. In ecology, this is the edge effect. Intelligence and diversity do not exist in the safe, isolated center of a system. They emerge at the boundaries where two different entities interact. This diagram illustrates a technical limit. A closed system at level 0 cannot see its own blind spots. Therefore, saying, "I need you," is not an emotional confession. It is a rigorous systems requirement for finding truth. Gathering missing information demands another observer. The algorithm has to be rewritten. The solitary act of conquering is struck out, replaced by the relational act of encounter. Look at this ancient papyrus fragment. It contains the Greek word anothen, which provides the vocabulary for this psychological shift. In 1st century Greek, anothen carries 2 meanings at once. It means, again, a repetition on a timeline, but it also means from above, a directional shift in the register from which that timeline is read. Sisyphus was stuck viewing his life strictly as a sequence of events to be beaten again. He needed to view his struggle from above. True transformation is not an event you achieve on a timeline. It is a shift in the register from which you view reality. We reach that shift when the archetypes drop their psychological armor. Sisyphus sets down his rock, the Grinch drops his sack of components, and the wizard finally steps out from behind his curtain to simply be seen. The paradox at the end of the engineer's 2-year journey is that the exit to the optimization trap was never locked. This panel outlines the operational ethic that replaces the algorithm. You leave negative space for others to exist without requiring them to conform to your control. This is the outcome of the notebook's arc: surrendering the conqueror's mindset, accepting the luck of the draw, and letting genuine connection emerge on its own terms.